What do you think of when I say the word witch? Some may picture their wife, girlfriend, or mother-in-law, and hey, I'm not one to judge. Others, however, may conjure up the image of a lady in a pointy hat, flying a broomstick. You know, characters from cartoons and fantasy. But the history of witches and witchcraft is far more complex and intriguing than mere fairy tales, and in this video, we'll explore the subject of witches and the role and impact they've had across folklore. If you love all things mythology and folklore, be sure to check out Pantheon Apparel. You'll find designs inspired by deities, beasts, and legends from across the mythos. We're rated excellent on Trustpilot and ship worldwide. Link in the description. While it's unclear exactly when the idea of witches originated from, one of the earliest records of a witch can be found in the Bible in the book of Samuel, thought to be written between 931 BC and 721 BC, where King Saul enlisted the witch of Endor to revive the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to help him defeat the Philistine army. Other references can be found in the Old Testament. Go back further through civilizations like ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome. The use of magic was part of everyday life. Priests and priestesses practiced rituals to invoke the gods, heal the sick, and protect against evil spirits. These early beliefs laid the groundwork for later ideas about witches and witchcraft. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, a time of great upheaval and uncertainty in Europe. It was during this period that the infamous witch hunts took place, leading to the persecution and execution of thousands of people accused of witchcraft. The reasons for these witch hunts were manifold. Religious fervor, economic instability, and fear of the unknown all played a role. Women, in particular, were targeted as witches, scapegoats for society's ills. Much of this hysteria can be traced back to a single influential book. The Malleus Maleficarum, Latin for Hammer of Witches, is one of the most infamous and influential treatises on witchcraft ever written. It was authored by two German Dominican friars, Heinrich Kramer and Jakob Sprenger, and first published in 1487 during the late medieval period. The primary purpose of the Malleus Maleficarum was to provide a guide for the identification, prosecution, and extermination of witches. This book played a significant role in shaping the European witch hunts of the early modern period by legitimizing the persecution of suspected witches. It provided detailed instructions on identifying witches, conducting trials, and extracting confessions through torture. The Malleus Maleficarum propagated the belief that witches were in league with the devil and posed grave threat to society, thus justifying their harsh treatment. And this treatment was extremely harsh. In the early modern period, witch trials surged in waves, peaking notably during the 17th century, particularly amidst the turmoil of the 30 Years' War. What had once been a belief in supernatural abilities evolved into accusation of diabolic pacts, often used to justify persecution and execution. These beliefs spread across Europe, with central and southern Germany experiencing significant witch-hunting activity from the 14th century onwards. In Denmark and Norway, the Reformation and political encouragement fueled witch hunts, while in England, laws regulated penalties for witchcraft. Scotland saw notable trials, including those presided over by King James VI himself. England reached a peak in witch hunting during the English Civil War, notably with the infamous witchfinder general, Matthew Hopkins. Meanwhile, North America experienced its first accusations of witchcraft in the 17th century, preceding the Salem witch trials by nearly half a century. Throughout these trials, magic was condemned not because it failed, but because it was believed to work effectively for the wrong reasons. This period saw the execution of tens of thousands of people accused of witchcraft. with critics emerging alongside the trials denouncing the hysteria that led to such persecution. The Salem witch trials, perhaps one of the most infamous episodes in the history of witchcraft, unfolded in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the late 17th century. What began as a series of strange and inexplicable events soon spiraled into a full-blown witch hunt, fueled by fear, superstition, and religious zealotry. The hysteria began in January 1692, when a group of young girls in the village of Salem Village, now Danvers, Massachusetts, began exhibiting bizarre behavior. They claimed to be possessed by evil spirits and accused several local women of bewitching them. A panic swept through the community, accusations of witchcraft proliferated, and trials were hastily convened to prosecute the accused. Over the course of the next several months, more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft in Salem and the surrounding towns. The trials were marked by a lack of due process, with hearsay and spectral evidence often considered as sufficient for conviction. Those accused of witchcraft faced harsh interrogations and torture, leading many to falsely confess in hopes of sparing their lives. Ultimately, 20 people were executed as a result of the Salem witch trials, 19 were hanged, and one man, Charles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones after refusing to enter a plea. The trials came to an end in October 1692, when Governor William Phips dissolved the Court of Oyer and Terminer, the special court established to hear witchcraft cases, and prohibited further prosecutions for witchcraft in the colony. The Salem witch trials remain a stark reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria and the consequences of unchecked fear and prejudice. In the aftermath of the trials, efforts were made to atone for the injustices inflicted upon the accused, and steps were taken to ensure greater safeguards for the rights of the accused in future legal proceedings. However, the scars left by the Salem witch trials continue to resonate, serving as a cautionary tale for the fragility of justice and the perils of intolerance. Tens of thousands of people were executed for witchcraft in Europe and the American colonies over several hundred years. The exact number is unknown, but it's estimated to be around 40,000 to 50,000. These methods of execution were both varied and horrific. One of the most famous methods of execution was burning at the stake. Suspected witches were tied to a pole or stake and set ablaze in public spectacles. The belief was that fire purified the soul or eradicated the evil associated with witchcraft. This method was commonly used in Europe. Suspected witches were often hanged, particularly in regions where burning at the stake was deemed too severe. Hanging was a more expedient method of execution and could be carried out with less spectacle. In American colonies, this was the preferred method of execution. The practice of ducking or swimming witches involved binding the accused and submerging them in water. If the person floated, it was believed to be evidence of their guilt, as they were rejecting the holy water and therefore in league with the devil. If they sank, they were considered innocent, though often drowned in the process. Talk about a lose-lose situation. In some cases, suspected witches were subject to pressing, also known as peine forte et dure, strong and hard punishment. This involved placing a heavy weight, such as a large stone or iron plate, on the accused person's chest until they confessed or were crushed to death. Though less common than other methods, beheading was occasionally used as a means of execution for witches, particularly in regions where it was a standard form of capital punishment. Beheading symbolized the severing of the accused person's connection to evil forces and was perceived as a more merciful form of execution compared to burning or drowning. The hunts, trials, and executions would have you believe that witches are evil. After all, why eliminate tens of thousands of them if they weren't seen as a threat? The perception of witches as inherently evil is deeply rooted in historical contexts, particularly during the early modern period in Europe. Witches were often depicted as malevolent individuals who made pacts with the devil to gain supernatural powers and wreak havoc on society. This portrayal stemmed from prevailing religious beliefs and superstitions that equated practices like herbal medicine, midwifery, and unconventional spiritual beliefs with witchcraft and devil worship. During this time, accusations of witchcraft were often driven by fear, ignorance, and societal tensions. Witches were scapegoated for various problems including crop failure, illness outbreaks, and natural disasters. In the eyes of many, they represented a threat to the established order and moral fabric of society. However, it's important to acknowledge that not all witches practiced dark or malevolent magic. While some may have indeed engaged in harmful rituals or spells, others practiced what might be considered as light magic, focusing on healing, protection, and benevolent outcomes. The diversity of beliefs and practices among accused witches highlights the complexity of the historical phenomenon of witchcraft. Throughout history, accusations of witchcraft were often weaponized as a means of exerting power, settling scores, or enforcing societal conformity. Many individuals accused of witchcraft were innocent victims of hysteria, prejudice, and injustice, subject to torture, imprisonment, and execution based on flimsy or fabricated evidence. Witchcraft is a phenomenon that transcends geographical boundaries and cultural divides, manifesting in various forms across different societies and epochs. From the tribal rituals of indigenous peoples to the elaborate ceremonies of ancient civilizations, beliefs in witchcraft have permeated human history, leaving an indelible mark on folklore and mythology worldwide. In exploring witchcraft in different cultures, one encounters a rich tapestry of traditions, practices, and beliefs, each imbued with its own unique flavor and significance. Indigenous cultures, for instance, have long revered shamans and medicine men as conduits between the natural and supernatural realms, utilizing herbs, incantations, and rituals to heal the sick and commune with ancestral spirits. These traditions emphasize a deep reverence for nature and the interconnectedness of all living beings. In Asia, particularly in countries like China, Japan, and India, diverse traditions of witchcraft and sorcery abound, reflecting the rich tapestry of cultural diversity and historical influences. From the Taoist sorcerers of China to the tantric practitioners of India, these traditions encompass a wide spectrum of practices, from healing and divination to exorcism and spellcasting. In Africa, witchcraft occupies a central role in many indigenous belief systems, with practitioners known as witch doctors or sangomas wielding immense influence within their communities. These individuals are believed to possess supernatural powers to heal, protect, or harm others, depending on their intentions and affiliations. Witchcraft in Africa is often intertwined with notions of spirituality, ancestor worship, and the balance between good and evil forces. Even in modern Western societies, remnants of ancient witchcraft traditions endure, albeit often diluted or romanticized forms. Movements such as Wicca, neo-paganism, and New Age spirituality draw upon elements of ancient witchcraft practices, incorporating rituals, spells, and symbols into their belief systems. These contemporary movements reflect a growing interest in reconnecting with nature, reclaiming ancient wisdom, and embracing alternative forms of spirituality. In stark contrast to the fear and persecution that characterized witchcraft in earlier centuries, the modern interpretation of witchcraft is largely one of empowerment, self-expression, and a deep connection with nature. Today, witchcraft has experienced a revival, particularly within movements such as Wicca, neo-paganism, and various forms of eclectic spiritual practices that draw from ancient traditions. Wicca, established in the mid-20th century by Gerald Gardner, is perhaps the most recognizable form of modern witchcraft. It emphasizes a balance between male and female forces, a reverence for the earth, and the cycle of the seasons, which are celebrated through festivals known as sabbats. Wiccans typically worship a goddess and a god, and their practices include spellcasting, herbalism, and divination. Neo-paganism encompasses a broader range of practices that revive and reinterpret pre-Christian, indigenous, and folkloric traditions, offering a spiritual pathway that diverges from mainstream religions. Modern witchcraft has woven its way into popular culture, influencing books, movies, and television series. This media portrayal often ranges from the stereotypical evil witch to more nuanced representations that reflect genuine practices and the ethical code of witches, such as the Wiccan Rede, which advises practitioners to harm none. For many, witchcraft is more than just a set of practices. It's a form of identity and a community. Social media platforms have become a hub for witches to share their practices, celebrate rituals together, and support one another in their spiritual journeys. This sense of community is crucial in an era where many are seeking connection and meaning beyond the material. As we've journeyed through the ages, from ancient civilizations to modern times, we've seen the evolution of the witch from a feared figure shrouded in superstition to a symbol of empowerment and spiritual connection. This transformation mirrors broader societal shifts and reminds us of the enduring human capacity to redefine our understanding of the world around us. Today, as we embrace diversity and strive for a more inclusive society, the story of the witch challenges us to confront our fears, question our prejudices, and seek deeper understanding beyond the myths. Let this exploration inspire us to approach the unknown with curiosity rather than fear, fostering a culture of tolerance and empathy. Remember, the narrative of the witch is not just a tale of the past. It is a vivid reminder of how cultural narratives can evolve, influencing and reflecting societal values across generations. As we move forward, let us carry the lessons learned from the history of witchcraft into our actions and attitudes, ensuring that fear and misunderstanding do not dictate how we treat the misunderstood or marginalized in our own time.